Okay, welcome to another Full Throttle Thursday. Appreciate y'all being with me. We're gonna go a little shorter than we normally do tonight because I'm right at the tail end of my cold here, but I am feeling better. I actually sound probably worse than I feel, so that's good. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about was finally, it looks as though President Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Zelensky have now entered into a 30-day ceasefire.
Oh,
Russia has said that there's certain parameters that have to be met. Obviously, Zelensky wants his territory back. That's not going to happen. He's going to secede that territory. And President Trump comes out, I would say, looking like the winner here because he was finally able to negotiate this. So, my first question, and we're going to kind of start in the order that everyone came in. So, it looks like Carl's going to be first, Glenn second, Gail third, Liam fourth, Julie fifth, Jeff and Pam sixth, and Walter seventh. And then we'll do the reverse when we do for the second part. So it's going to be for Carl first. But here's the thing. So you got a 30-day ceasefire. That's not a lot of time. So what are they going to do in that 30 days is the important part. Are they going to continue to negotiate? Are they going to continue to work out different ways to keep this peace, continuous? Or after 30 days, is everything going to go to hell in a handbasket and the war is going to continue on? So, Carl, I'm going to ask you to put on your geopolitical thinking cap. And what do you think is going to happen here? Is this going to be a sustainable ceasefire or not?
it's hard to say since you got um, Zelensky wanting things and Putin wanting things, and is you never know what if they'll agree on anything.
Mhm. So you're not too you're kind of lukewarm on whether or not it's going to last.
Yeah, I'm not I'm not
Okay.
sure.
All right. Glenn, what about you? What are your thoughts here? I mean, Vladimir Putin has basically said, look, in order for us to end this war, you can never be part of NATO. Now, we know that NATO wants Ukraine to be part of NATO. And of course, Zelensky wants to be part of NATO because then he has the military backing of NATO. But right now, he is conceding that and he's conceding his territory. So is this thing going to last? What are your thoughts?
I think if they give up the idea of being part of NATO, then uh, Putin will cease fire altogether. He won't be, there's no reason to attack him after that.
Right.
Unless he keeps up with those bio labs and everything. And 'cause wasn't Putin concerned about that and his people being poisoned by it?
Exactly. And that's something that President Trump, I think, should have said in the negotiations that part of any settlement and ceasefire is a complete destruction of any secret biolabs or working with the Chinese or anyone else. So I agree with you on that. I don't believe, excuse me, that that was part of this ceasefire deal. I think that it's basically a framework at this point, and they've agreed to stop, but it doesn't necessarily mean that in the next 30 days, they're not going to continue to negotiate, which is what I think they're going to do. But then again, Zelensky is really the issue here. It's not so much Vladimir Putin, from what I'm understanding here. Gail, what about you? What are your thoughts here on this one? So they want to be part of NATO. Putin has said they can never be part of NATO. He does not want a NATO affiliated country that close to his borders. And Zelensky's going to have to accept that fact. And he's also going to have to accept the fact that he's not going to get his territory back. So what do you think? Do you think this is going to be long lasting or not?
Hard to say. As a pharmacist I worked for when I was young, as Mr. Weber, he said all foreigners are nuts. But as he used to say. But well, as President Trump doesn't want him to be in NATO either, so I don't think so. I think he should push for that. I'm surprised that they haven't discussed those biolabs, so I really am.
I know.
And I think you ought to, because that maybe could scare enough. And the territory that Putin has, is that the more the Russian speaking people that are there than the
Well, it was southern Ukraine, right? It was Crimea first in 2014.
yeah.
And then from there they backed out, but then they came back in. And when they came back in, they're trying to, well, they took a lot of areas around Kiev and places that I
Russia.
can't even pronounce, basically, but
That's
not
Russia.
Kiev in and of itself. And so if they ever captured Kiev, it's over. Like it's over at that point. And I don't think they've done that. I think they've backed away from that. And sadly, we have reinforced Ukraine's ability to be able to stop the Russians from taking over Kiev. So it's been a nasty, horrific war that has been going on for what, almost 3 years now, and close to 1 million people, I think 600 or 700,000 people have died. I mean, honestly, it's one of the worst toll wars as far as casualties in history. I mean, it's pretty bad. It's up there. It's not the worst, but it's up there. I mean, it's definitely up there. So crazy stuff. They got to stop this thing. Liam, what are your thoughts on this one? So you got a 30-day ceasefire. They're going to continue to negotiate, but it seems like both sides are pretty dug in. Putin's saying, hell no, you're not joining NATO, and no, you're not getting your territory back. Zelensky is saying, I want my territory back, and I want to join NATO. So it's definitely touch and go here.
Old litter box.
Well, I'll take two different approaches at this.
Okay.
Number one, if you poke a bad Russian bear, I don't think he's going to respond too well. But let's say that Ukraine does comply, somehow, or Trump is able to keep him in his place. I wouldn't envision that this thing would be sustainable, right? I mean, why not? I mean, Trump wants peace. Putin seems to be willing to work this out, and Ukraine, they just need to keep themselves in line, and hopefully we can just end this horrific thing.
Yeah. Well, look, I think you're right. And I think that from this standpoint, the United States now being in the driver's seat between the two countries, I think that the United States, whether they want to admit it or not, they're more on the side of Russia from the standpoint of you can't become part of NATO. We're trying to actually defund ourselves from NATO, right? Or make them pay more and all that. So we're even having our own issues with Europe and with NATO and Brussels and all that. So I think that the alignment is probably a little bit closer to Putin than it is Zelensky, especially after the dust up in the Oval Office. So I don't think he has much bargaining chips because, again, Europe doesn't have the money. France doesn't have the money. Germany doesn't have the money. None of them have the money because a lot of them spent the money to Ukraine already. So they're kind of broke. So they can saber rattle all they want, but in reality, they don't have the financial backing to even support the war. We were the ones that were taking care of 85, 90% of it. And now if we back down and say, sorry, we're not giving you any more money, well, how are they going to get money? Where are they going to get money from? They're going to go to China? I don't think so. I think China is kind of staying out of it. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Julie, what are your thoughts on this one? So Zelensky wants to join NATO. We've said, no, you're not joining NATO. Russia says that is a red line for them. They're not going to allow it to happen. Zelensky says, well, I'll only do a peace deal if you give me back my territories. He's already pretty much understood that he's not getting his territories back. So I think he's just going to be submissioned basically here is my guess. But what are your thoughts?
Hit the nail on the head. I don't think Zelensky deserves any of it, nor does he deserve anything clearly from us or from Putin. Putin is right, and so are we. Zelensky needs to jump off that table and fall into a pool, and I hope he drowns. But that's just me. Anyway, I do not like it. I don't like any of it. Putin's got his reasons, and so do we. And now he owes, and he owes big time. Don't go buying your wife a Bugatti. Help your people instead, you freaking jerk. So I'm sorry. No, he's not going to budge either. He's a little snake. And we all know he's a snake. Snake in the grass. He's the only one that deserves a bullet. Not the rest of them, just him. So no. And there's not going to be much budging. It's going to have to take an act. And I'm sure that Trump will push it. He'll push the envelope. And I hope he does.
So you think it'll last?
No, I don't think the ceasefire will last.
Oh, you don't?
Nope.
Okay. No. All right.
Zelensky is too much of a jackass.
I do agree from the standpoint that in order to get a peace agreement, Zelensky must be removed from negotiations and from the country.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
100% agree. As soon as he left the Oval Office, I said he's the only impediment to peace, clearly.
Yep.
You
And
know that he
so-
met with the Democrats, don't you, before he met with
Yep.
Trump and his
Yeah.
administration?
And again, the Democrats should be charged with the Logan
Absolutely.
Act. They should be charged with the Logan Act
They should
because
be, yeah,
they're not heads of
exactly.
state. So
No,
they
they're not.
can't they
They're
can't
rhinos,
necessarily
too.
negotiate with foreign leaders. They're not allowed to.
A lot of this has got to stop. And the trouble is the Democrats keep interfering with everything Trump's doing, and it's got to stop. Even these justices who are out there pushing their bullshit, excuse my French,
Mhm.
is not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Trump has the ultimate power, and that's the way it should be, and leave it alone.
That's absolutely
But they
right.
keep right on
He has the
pushing it.
power through the executive branch to do what he's going to do. I'll go over that, how we're going to stop these radical extremist judges that are interfering. We've got
Yes.
a new executive order we'll talk about here in a minute. Jeff and Pam, so do we got, okay, so we have Pam. So Pam, what are your thoughts here? Ceasefire, 30 days, continuous negotiations. Is it going to last? Oh, there's Jeff.
Well, okay, when did exactly the Ukraine war start again?
Goodness.
2 years ago.
February of
22?
22, I think.
Yeah, so-
2022, somewhere around there.
So it's been 3 years and they've had a bottomless, budget. They've had anything
the
they
money
wanted,
go?
all these billions of dollars. And now Americans are taking a cut. We've got Doge going in and ruthlessly, getting rid of all our wasteful spending, and some, people are getting laid off that maybe shouldn't be also. So we're going through a lot of pain in the United States. So I don't think anybody wants to pay for this war anymore, and it'll stop when we quit paying for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that too, but I also think that Zelensky needs to be removed from power 100%. So,
Well,
Jeff, did you have
yeah,
anything?
he's a gigolo. That's just the only thing the
Yeah.
only way I would describe him.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Well, I think he's a leech, really.
Yeah.
I think he's a shyster. I think he's a con
Parasite.
artist,
That's a bloodsucker.
bloodsucker, leech. Yeah, all of those things.
They're corrupt, and we've been paying and they've had 3 years. I mean, if you can't do it in 3 years, it's not going to happen. I mean, I
Right.
remember Vietnam, and it was horrible, but we won the World War II in 4 years.
Mm-hmm. I know. And look how long Vietnam went on. And, we left Vietnam like we left Talibanistan with our tail between our legs. It's ridiculous. That's true. The longer a war goes on, duration, the more likely we'll lose it, or at least it'll be a stalemate or, end in a draw or whatever it might be. So you're right. When we knock them out fast, like in 1990, when we went into Desert Storms and within, 43 days, it was gone. Boom, right? But then what did we do? We made a mistake. We did not remove him from power. We left him in power. He then was able to capture all of his money, his finances, his power, and then he went on another killing spree. And then we had to go back again with, Junior, right, with W, to go back in and kind of finish the job. But even that was stupid because it was, again, really all about oil. And we have our own oil here. So think about how many people fought in both of those wars, from Desert Storms and the other one, the Gulf War. And I mean, it was ridiculous. And then look what we did with Afghanistan. I mean, why were we there? I mean, we should have learned the lesson from the Russians, right? The Russians fought with them for, what was it, 10 years, I think it was. And they basically got crushed because of the terrain and everything else. And we thought that we could go back in and do better. Like, it didn't make any sense. So, okay, so who was next on the Walter? So the ceasefire, 30 days. Zelensky wants his territory back. He's not going to get it. He wants to join NATO. That's not going to happen. Putin has basically said, no more talk about joining NATO. I don't want a NATO-sponsored country that close to my borders. So I'll do this ceasefire. However, those are some of my conditions. 30 days, Is this thing going to last, or are they going to go back to fighting?
I think the 30-day may last, but as far as a permanent cessation of battle between Russia and Ukraine, I do not think will. And the reason I think that will not happen is because basically the one world government nations so hell-bent on war, because that helps them control nations and control people and control money. They will put enough pressure on Zelensky to where when it comes time to signing on the dotted line for the permanent changes, he's not going to do it. Just like he did before, like right after Russia invaded, they did have a peace deal together, but Boris Johnson from the United Kingdom went over to Ukraine, talked to Zelensky, and next thing you know, Zelensky canceled the peace agreement, and the war's been going on since.
Exactly.
I do not think there's going to be permanent peace there.
I think there needs to be, and I've said this before publicly, there even needs to be either a mutiny with inside Ukraine to oust Zelensky from the inside out, basically inside his own country, or quite frankly, let's do a color revolution. I mean, the CIA, Mossad, all these people have been doing this for years against so many other countries. Why don't we do the same thing and do a color revolution and get rid of Zelensky in the middle of the night somehow? You know what I mean? Get him out of the picture and have somebody else take over. Because I agree, the only way that there's going to be long-term peace, in my opinion, is if you get rid of the person that is an impediment to that peace, and that is Zelensky. So I don't know. We're going to have to see what happens. Jeff, thank you for joining us as well. So we'll go to you next. So you probably had a chance to hear what happened. So you have a 30-day ceasefire that was signed, I believe, today or yesterday, I think it was. And at this point, there are parameters and certain conditions that Vladimir Putin has put into place. And if they're not met, then the war could continue on. Both Zelensky and Putin both want certain things that probably they're not going to get. And the push to be part of NATO is really what drew Putin to invade Ukraine to begin with. So what are your thoughts here? Do you think this thing's going to last, or is it going to blow up in 30 days or less?
I don't think it's going to last.
Yeah, just a few thoughts on it. As always with the ceasefire, people like Zelensky are just going to use it to rearm, re-strategize, reposition, and replan. So it's only going to help him. Russia is making big headways at the moment, and they're positioning themselves quite effectively to maximize any gains that they've got. As far as NATO goes, excuse me, NATO, look, they're the reason why this whole thing started. One of the major reasons. NATO, contrary to the agreement that was between Ukraine and Russia before, Russia always insisted, NATO, you keep the hell out of my borders, you stay away. And it's NATO and the EU and Europe that have breached that agreement before, which they never had any intention of.
Sound.
The bad guys never had any intention of.
You got quiet there for a minute. Your sound. Oh, there you go. Okay.
I think people like Julie are absolutely correct. Her comments were pretty well spot on. Russia is Zelensky's a creep. Excuse me, he's a con man, he's a grub. This ceasefire is probably not going to last because Zelensky can't help himself. Yeah, I think the whole thing's just a big mess, but I think they are grossly underestimating Russia. On the other side of it, I don't know if you've heard or not, but we have two major parties in Australia, Labor and Liberal. Labor's in power now, very much socialism or Fabianism, but both of those are oh, very pro-Ukraine. Oh my goodness, they're making a
It's
big
so
push
sick.
to support Ukraine
It's
now,
just sick.
and
It's
now
happening
they're
all
making
over.
all sorts of ugly statements against Russia. And Russia has officially told Australia either pull your head in or you're, because Australia wants to send soldiers to the Ukraine, which is absolutely unconstitutional and ridiculous. And Russia has already told Australia officially, you stick your nose in anymore, and you're going to have us.
You know, here's the other thing. I think that with the tariffs that President Trump is implementing on Europe, on NATO, forcing them to pay more money, right? All these different things. I think they're going to have to pay more money, number one, which means there's going to be less money to continue the war efforts for Ukraine. So, in some respects, the tariffs could help end the war. I think that we're going to find out probably if this ceasefire doesn't work, which I think it actually probably will, but if it doesn't work, then there's going to have to be an end to this thing by June or July, one way or another, whether Russia takes out, Zelensky and Ukraine completely, or, if it's just a complete end to the war in a peaceful way, which is what we would hope it would be. But I think the reality is this, and there ain't no more of this. It ain't. You can't find it at NATO. You can't find it in Europe. You can't find it in the UK. You can't find it in Germany. You can't find it in Italy. You can't find it in France. Why? Because they have spent so much money already giving to Ukraine. That's why. So I think that tariffs, as well, thank you, honey, as well as everything else, is part of the reason why I think it's going to end. And I don't think they want a nuclear situation. I know the United States doesn't. I'm pretty sure Russia doesn't, because if you think the death toll is bad now, forget it. I mean, that would be horrific, cataclysmic. And I don't think they want to go there. So I think it's going to end. I just don't know when. We'll see if this 30-day thing is the actual end to it, but I don't know. I have a feeling it's not going to truly end until Zelensky is gone, because I think he's the impediment to peace in the area, in the region. So we'll see what happens. So let's talk about the next thing. We have had over 160 lawsuits in the first 2 months against President Trump. And again, what he is doing, he is allowed to do. Not only is there legal precedent through the Supreme Court, through that one case with Sean Spicer and Stephen Miller and Joe Biden, who fired Sean Spicer. And because of that, the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, sorry, Joe can fire whoever he wants. He's the president, sort of, auto pen president. And that's why he can do that. So I think what's happening here is President Trump is saying, okay, if we have these activist judges out there that are trying to tell the executive branch what they can and cannot do, number one, they're going to be defeated because they're appealing these things. That's number one. Number two, we're not seeing arrests and indictments like we want to because of the amount of inundation of all these lawsuits. They're fighting lawsuits that are trying to stop them from implementing America's mandate. So that's why there's been a lag, in my opinion, on some of these prosecutions. However, President Trump and his people are smart. And he came out with a brand new executive order that should crack down on these radical activist judges and these far left groups that are using the courts and trying to do these frivolous injunctions, which are not only costing taxpayers millions upon millions of dollars, but they're delaying President Trump's ability to get things done and to get things completed and Doge and everything else. The good news about it is it's happening at the 2-month mark. We're not a year in while this is happening. We've got 3 years and 10 months still to go with President Trump. So keep that in mind, that at least it's happening now. And I will give the Department of Justice a lot of credit because they are filing immediate appeals against all of this stuff. But check out this executive order. The order specifically targets the reckless pursuit of frivolous injunctions, which have repeatedly cost taxpayers millions of dollars and disrupted Republican governance. These cases, driven by radical activist judges, threaten to paralyze this administration before it can fully enact the mandate delivered by voters in the 2024 election. So far, only 2 of these cases have been resolved. The memorandum addressed directly to the heads of executive departments and agencies instructs them to firmly enforce Federal Rule of Civil Procedure Act 65 subset C, which says that anyone who asks a court for an injunction, a temporary order stopping a government action, must first deposit money or a bond with that court. This money is intended to cover potential harm or costs to the government if the cost later decides that the injunction was improperly issued. Trump argues the activist organizations have been abusing the courts, frequently filing weak or meritless lawsuits against the government to slow down or block policies that they disagree with, often choosing sympathetic judges to hear their cases. So let's talk about this. So basically what they're doing is they're saying, okay, if you want to continue your bullshit injunctions against us, it's going to cost you money to do it, number one. And number two, if you lose, you owe that money. So now it's possible that even though these Democrats want to stop all of these people, these lawyers, they're going to look at this case and go, it's really a pretty weak argument you have. I don't think we want to file this injunction because we're going to have to put up $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever it might be. And if we lose, you're responsible for it, the lawyer that files the case. So I love this executive order. So let's start with you, Jeff, because we're going to go back around. Do you think this is going to work to stop these injunctions?
Yeah, sorry, I think my phone dropped out on the last comments. I did some text.
You need some text on what I was talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so
about,
all these
yeah,
different,
look,
I'll be brief, all these different lawsuits against President Trump. He signed an executive order that now states that they have to put up money before they issue an injunction. And after that, if they lose, they're responsible financially for paying all the court costs for the Department of Justice to have to fight when they win these cases. So my question is, do you think that this is going to be a large enough deterrent to stop a lot of these injunctions, moving forward?
I think it will be a big deterrent, but I don't know how deep their pockets are, and we all know where their funding and everything comes from anyway. It's all dirty money.
Okay. All right. Walter, what do you think? Is this going to be enough of a deterrent, or are they going to continue with their craziness?
100%, this will be zero deterrent. Number one, actual court costs are not that high. Court cost is the fee you pay to file your pleadings or your paperwork. That's not that high. Now, if it had said court costs and attorney fees, my opinion may be different, number one. But number two, we all know that the demons have almost unlimited money to ply their trade. And unfortunately, and I'm sad to say this, anytime you have a lot of money, you will find lawyers lining up to get it. So I don't think it's going to be any deterrent at all.
What about this part here? The memo tells federal agencies to make sure that whenever someone sues the government for any injunction, the agency needs to request that the plaintiff, the person or organization suing them, provides enough money up front to cover possible costs and damages the government might suffer if the injunction turns out to be unjustified. So they're going to force these judges, I guess, or these organizations to put money up. Now, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on television. Is that even constitutional or legal to do? I've never heard of that before.
No, I don't think it is constitutional.
So you think that they'll challenge that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't, at this point in the United States, I know specifically speaking from my state, you can't just file a lawsuit and then say, okay, you have to put up the money right now in case you lose, or you have to pay attorney fees right now, or in case you lose. You can't do that. That's what an appeal bond is for. So that after the litigation is done, once a judgment is actually rendered from the court, then if the party who loses wants to take an appeal, they have to file a bond to make sure that the judgment amount is secure in case the party filing the appeal loses. But I just don't think it's constitutional to do that prospectively at the time the lawsuit's filed.
Okay. So then in your opinion, this would have to be an immediate appeal to a higher court, and then the higher court would step in and shoot down the injunction, which is going to take us more time, basically.
Yes.
So they would also, I would assume, if they were going to fight this executive order, they would have to raise money to fight that executive order, I guess, then defeat the executive order and then continue their bullshit. Is that kind of what you're saying? Basically? Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Yeah, that's what they're
All
going to
right.
do.
Jeff and Pam, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Walter, or do you think that this will be a deterrent?
Well, if it's money they just take from another government agency, which means our tax dollars, they don't care how much they squander. So I guess it matters where the money would come from. And I think when you read that executive order, I think Trump referred to a particular act and a
He
code
did.
number.
It was
And so maybe
Enforcement of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedures Act 65C, which says that anyone who asks a court for an injunction, a temporary order stopping a government action, must first deposit money or a bond with the court. So he's referring to an actual act that is passed by law. So maybe it's something that they don't enforce, and it's just like on the books, but they don't really enforce it. But the executive order is saying that he's instructing every agency to enforce it. So maybe it is actually constitutional, and maybe it is legally binding. So I don't know.
So if the money is coming from the taxpayers, then it does nothing. But if it's coming from Soros, it might not do anything either. But if it's coming from people who actually have to count their money, then maybe it would make some impact. I would hope that it would, but it would probably be more effective if they could make it retroactive on the 160 lawsuits that are out there already, because some of those might be morons that don't have the money.
Yeah, that and the fact that we are cutting into the government, we are stopping the gravy train. So even though we haven't, quote unquote, cut all this waste, fraud, and abuse, we've at least stopped it. We've obviously, pinpointed it, and now we've stopped it because, of course, DOJ is now in charge of all these agencies. So there's no allocation going out like it was. So it may not have been cut yet, but at least it's not being given out anymore. So maybe that is the case. Maybe that there isn't a lot of money out there. And it seems like the left-wing billionaires and donors are so fed up with the Democrats that they're not putting up any money. They're basically just saying, hey, you're on your own. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways, I guess, to look at it. What do you think, Pam, on this?
Well, if it works, it's brilliant.
Uh-huh. Short and sweet. Got it. Okay, no problem. Julie, what do you think? Do you think it's going to work? Or do you think Walter's?
I think Walter's dead on. Where there's a will, there's a way. And the other gentleman with Pam just brought up a big one. Soros and his goddamn deep pockets. So, those Democrats, they're always thinking. They're always trying to find a way out, to find.
They're communists. That's what they do.
Yes, that's what they do.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't think this one's going to work, but time will tell and we'll see. But I hope it does. I really do. I hope it does.
I hope it does too. I have a feeling it will slow down some of them. I really do.
Yeah,
Because if it's a law that's already on the books and they have to put up money to sue, I've never heard of that before. So I do understand where Walter's coming from, because I've never heard of putting up money to sue. I've never heard that before. But apparently it is part of this Federal Rule of Civil Procedures 65C. Walter, if you wanna pull that up and kind of take a little peek at it while we're going through this, because I mean, if it's a rule on the books, then by law, don't they have to adhere by that rule? I guess would be the other question. So, Liam, what are your thoughts here, buddy? Do you think that this executive order issued by President Trump is going to be enough to deter future injunctions?
Which just got a whole lot more interesting when you just threw out that detail that it's along the books. Maybe you said it earlier, but I misheard. But this is
Sorry, I'm drinking hot tea for my throat.
stay healthy. I mean, if it's a law, I mean, first of all, don't know why you need an executive order to enforce it, but okay, let's just say that it's enforceable like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess it could be a deterrent, but as you know, they're always going to find a way around Trump's efforts to save America. And
Well, it's funny that it says the memo tells federal agencies to make sure that whenever someone sues the government for an injunction, that agency must request that the plaintiff, the person suing, puts up this money. Agencies then must work directly with the attorney general to decide how much money to ask for, and they must clearly justify that amount to the court. So in other words, they can't just say, okay, you want to file an injunction against us, and we don't believe that you're in the legal right to do so. So we're going to just pick up a number in a hat, $10 million. That's what it's going to cost for you to do that. Now, the left has operated like that. Remember what Judge Egeron did to President Trump, right? A couple of years ago. He said, in order for you to appeal, remember? He said, for you to appeal your conviction, your bullshit conviction, you had to put up $500 million to do it. Now, he then sued and he got it reduced to, what was it, 100? I think it was like 100,000 or something. I don't remember. It was a lot less. But it looks like the left was using something similar to go after President Trump, to say that now that we've convicted you, if you want to appeal, you have to put up money to appeal. And apparently that was shot down by Egeron. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe Walter is correct on this, and maybe we're all wrong, and it's not constitutional. I don't know. That's why we're having this this discussion.
That precedent would be key detail as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, Gail, what are your thoughts on this? You've kind of heard all of this going back and forth. Your head's ready to explode. So,
Well, if it's really on the books, and a lot of these people that are doing the lawsuits or organizations aren't too friendly with Soros, or not, he's not connected to some of them at least. It will help, I'm sure, but there's so many little ins and outs here that drives me crazy.
mhm.
I would love to have it work. I mean, it's a wonderful idea. And if they made Trump do it, why can't they be held to the same thing?
Yeah. I don't know. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. So, Glenn, before I get to you, it says one key mechanism is this federal rule, which mandates that a party seeking the preliminary injunction enjoined a restrained party if the injunction is wrongly issued. Consistent enforcement of this rule is critical to ensure that taxpayers do not foot the bill for the costs or damages caused by wrongly issued preliminary relief by activist judges, and to achieving the effective administration of justice. Therefore, it is the policy of the United States to demand that parties seeking injunctions against the federal government must cover the costs and damages incurred if the government is ultimately found to have been wrongfully enjoined or restrained. Federal courts should hold litigants accountable for their misrepresentations and ill-granted injunctions. So what do you think, Glenn?
I would ask the question, can we get like an arbiter that hears what they want to do and then let them know if it's okay to do it or not, instead of,
so like a middleman.
Yeah, someone that goes in there, they said, well,
that's a great idea.
Sue them for this. Can we do it? Is it, or is it going to be a frivolous lawsuit? and just to, piss away taxpayers' money. And then just, okay, no, you're not able to do that.
That's actually a really good question and a really good point, because think about it. All of these injunctions that are happening, these people do not have the legal right, because they're not correct. They're not in the constitutional, avenue that they're allowed to be able to do this, because the executive branch has certain amount of authority and power. And these activist judges, especially at district court levels, do not have the right to tell the executive branch what they can do, what they can't do, what they can cut, what they can't cut, who they can fire, who they have to hire. So what if you're right? What if there was like a middleman where they said, and I don't know, maybe it can even be through an executive order. I have no idea. It's a great idea. What if there's an executive order he could sign that says anyone moving forward that wants to file an injunction against, our administration must first go through an arbitration agreement or, court appointed arbitrator first to see if it's even legal. And then maybe the arbitrator would save the taxpayers all the money in the world by saying, sorry, you don't have a case here, and shut it down. It's a great point. I didn't even think of that. But then again, I'm not an attorney, so.
Well, neither am I, but it was just something,
It's kind of a common sense thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, why wouldn't you ask somebody, is there any legal standpoint for me to do this?
Right.
Or am I just wasting time and money? And then even take it a step further, with the payment part, you got to pay for this to find out. And then, if it's okay, then you get your money back. If not, then,
right.
You're paying for his opinion, I guess, and then it'd be a constitutional opinion. Not,
but then who pays the bill or foots the bill for the arbitrator?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The person that's wanting to file the suit,
right.
If you're going to file a suit, then you have to, instead of it costing the taxpayer to find out from the arbitrator, you foot the bill.
I'm going to put that on X later, because that's a really good idea. And maybe that can be done through executive action, where he could say, okay, if you want to sue us, you have to go through an arbitrator first. You got to put up the money. You got to go through an arbitrator. And if the arbitrator says that you have a legal right to do this, then at that point, go ahead and, enter your injunction against us, and we'll fight against it. We'll appeal it, and we'll see who wins at the end. Right. So I think that makes the most sense. It's sad that we have to deal with this because they have no power, right?
Well,
they don't have the Senate. They don't have the House. They don't have anything. And the only thing they have are these activist judges.
Well, just a lot of frivolous lawsuits that are out there that shouldn't even be litigated.
Right.
They just think, oh, I didn't get enough M&Ms in my package because the package is this big and I only got that many M&Ms. So because I'm that, narrow-minded, I think I should sue you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's basically what they're doing at this point. So, Carl, we're gonna end up with you, and then we're gonna probably cut it out we could probably talk for a few minutes afterwards, but I don't want to go much longer. I'm not feeling it. I'm sweating. It's breaking a sweat here, so I think maybe the fever is breaking or something. I don't know. But anyway, Carl, what are your thoughts here? Do you think this is going to be enough of a deterrent to stop future injunctions, or are they going to try to figure out a way to get around it?
Well, all these judges, all these cases have come up. I look up the judge's name and they've all been either Obama, Biden, or Clinton appointed judges.
True.
And
they are all Biden and Clinton and Obama appointed judges. Even George, W. Bush judges have gone against him at some point too. So, those are all globalists regardless. They're not America first types of judges. But, reading a little bit further on Rule 65, it says Rule 65C mandates the court to require in all applicable cases that a movant for an injunction post security in an amount that the court considers proper to cover potential costs and damages to the enjoined or restrained party. Subset B, that was subset A. Subset B says the security amount the agency is requesting is based on a reasonable assessment of the potential harm to the enjoined or the restrained party. And subset C, failure of the party that moved to preliminary relief to comply with Rule 65C results in denial or dissolution of the requested injunctive relief. So I guess this law is on the books. It's not enforced very often. And what they are directing with this executive order is from now on, if anyone gets sued in my administration, in my cabinet, if you're the head of one of my, agencies, you have to immediately demand that subset 65C on this rule is implemented. So meaning that it looks like it's legal, it looks like it's constitutional, it looks like it's on the books, and it's saying here that if they don't put up the money, then it could be resulting in a denial or dissolution of the requested injunctive relief. So I don't know. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this executive order is gonna have some teeth. And I think a lot of the question is, though, is it retroactive? What about the 160 that have already been filed? Is this for anything after 160? Is this for 161, 162, 163? Or, as you said, Julie, is this going to go back retroactively to all the rest of them?
Yep.
That's what we don't know. I want to get more clarification on that, but I don't know. We shall see what happens there. But that's all my thoughts for this evening. I am definitely feeling a little under the weather, so I'm going to cut it a little shorter than normal. But thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you figuring out the new time and all that as well. So God bless you all, and we'll see you soon. Go ahead and cut it.
Hey, good. Feel better.
I'll stay on for a few more.